If you watched the first video on forming contracts online, we talked about a few requirements that apply when you're dealing with consumers in a contractual environment. You need to have informed consumers, you need to treat them fairly, and you need to have fair contractual terms. In this second part, we're going to look at some more requirements that bite on consumer transactions online, with particular application to digital products. Lots of consumer laws require you to confirm certain information to a consumer both at the time of purchase and after. This obligation actually even goes so far as to the purchase mechanic itself. So, for example, recent European law is quite prescriptive about what goes on the buy button when somebody buys something online. The European legislation says that you have to put buy with an obligation to pay on that button. Now, clearly that's impractical when it comes to mobile devices and small screen real estate, and actually it's not very consumer friendly, but the consumer objective is obvious. Consumers need to know that they are agreeing to buy something. So the regulators are going against terms like subscribe, which is ambiguous in that respect. So you need to look at that buy button and make sure that consumers understand that they're engaging in a paid transaction. Similarly, some jurisdictions have things like double-click requirements, France being a good example. This means that a consumer is required to confirm twice that they actually intend to enter the transaction so that they don't make a mistake. Secondly, lots of jurisdictions have requirements that you have to send the consumer certain information after the transaction. This is usually key information about what they bought, what their cancellation rights might be, and what the terms of the transaction were. Different jurisdictions have different requirements about how you need to provide that information. Email is usually fail-safe, but that's usually quite onerous on the product teams. Just posting it on your website, though, is usually not going to be good enough because the consumer doesn't control whether or not that information changes. There are alternatives around this that people are investigating, such as fixed files and login details, but you need to look at that on each product build. And finally, lots of jurisdictions in this space have very specific rules around durable medium. And so that ties into what we were talking about before. If you're sending it by email, that counts. If you send it by post, that counts. But you need to think about how you get that confirmation information through to the customer. The next issue I want to talk about is what's often called the right of remorse. So this is a right in lots of jurisdictions for a consumer to pull out of a distance contract. That is a contract they don't form in a shop where they can feel and touch the goods and deal with the seller, but contracts that they form online or over the telephone. As a general proposition, this right is a right to say, I got the good, I looked at it, I don't like it, for whatever reason, I want to cancel my product and have a refund. These rights vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, so you can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to cancellation rights. Also, depending on the product, the consumer may lose their cancellation right at the time of purchase, but usually only if they're told that that's going to happen prior to the purchase. So it ties into our first video where we talked about information obligations, that you want to make sure the consumer gets all the information that they need at the right time in the purchase flow so that you can cancel their right of remorse if that's available under local law. It's really important to realise that the right of remorse is distinct from any warranty requirements. So if you're selling somebody a digital file and it doesn't work when it arrives, the consumer will have a right under warranty requirements and general consumer laws to get a refund or return that product on the basis that it's faulty. But even a product that works perfectly well might be able to be avoided if the consumer has a right of remorse.